Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Anna, for the opportunity to come and speak today. I'm probably going to mess the slides up. Hopefully they'll be on there. But I just wanted to raise the awareness, really, of the Shareholders Rights Directive. So this is a great opportunity for us to do so. I think SRD II has quietly gone under the radar a little bit of CSDR. I mean, take today, for example, CSDR is covered quite substantially, and we think that with the regulation going live the same month, September next year, that we're trying to create the awareness of SRD, the importance of it, because I spoke at many conferences already this year, and it was almost like a Brexit split in who knew about the reg. It was a 50-50 in most cases, but I'm pleased to say that we're now gaining a lot more momentum as we go through. Is it? Excellent. So what is the directive trying to achieve? In essence, it's trying to achieve greater corporate governance. It's trying to have greater presence at AGMs, increased voting, and it really better engagement between the issuers and their shareholders. We will continue to have shareholders that have no interest in AGMs, no interest in voting, and likewise we'll probably still have some issuers that have got no interest in their shareholders. However, from next year, from September, no longer can the issuer community or the investor community blame the holding chain because the pipework, the technical communication channels will be put in place to allow this to be possible. So we'll cover some of the key elements of the directive and the key impacts. I think we need to remind ourselves what the spirit of the directive is as well. We hear you'll hear a lot about minimum requirements being met, whether that's the issuers doing this or certain industry bodies, but collectively as a group across the industry, we are going above and beyond the minimum requirements. We think that the main impacts here are quite substantial, so it requires our attention, it requires our focus, because first of all, it's the right thing to do. Secondly, for those of you that are in the asset servicing space, for example, there's not many opportunities that we've ever had in the regulatory space that allows us to achieve what we really want to achieve, which is European harmonisation. So SRD really does help us put a framework together to finally get there. But hopefully all of these points are familiar with you all. So today I'll come and talk a little bit about the impacts, the opportunities, and what we are doing as well within the industry groups, because I'll come on to them because there's quite a few. But we think for today's topic and discussion, the biggest impacts for everybody to be aware of is really in the general meeting space and the shareholder disclosure. These are the obvious two because voting now is at beneficial owner level. And this is where the European Commission's been quite clever, I suppose, because whilst they haven't defined what a shareholder is, because that's a debate that we've probably had for many, many years and will continue to do so, but the way in which the implementing reg has been written and the way in which the annex tables, for those of you familiar with the annex tables in the level 2 text, it discloses the beneficial owner. You can't avoid it. So the disclosure process as well, from a shareholder ID perspective, probably it actually exists today, but it exists in many different ways. So this isn't something new, but what is new is we are able to standardise this approach. This is the first time we've been able to make something more electronic than it is today. So via Issuers Companies Act, where they write to compliance areas to ask for you to disclose your books and records. Another impact, arguably the biggest impact for some, is in the tech space. Personally, I see the industry at somewhat of a crossroads. And what I mean by that is because the changes to general meetings, the changes or the introduction of shareholder disclosure is being developed within 20022. So we think that's quite important. Why is this an issue? Well, very few intermediaries actually use 20022. It's only custodians and CSDs that connect into T2S, certainly within Europe, that really use 20022. There are not a lot of the custodians that we speak with, their clients all interact in 15022. So in order for the industry to be ready, you all from the CSDs will no doubt be receiving questionnaires from various bodies on your adaptation plans for SRD, your plans for 20022, because I know this because you've certainly got some from DB that we've been sending out in the last few weeks. But like all regulation, change brings opportunity. You know, we've got to look at it from an opportunity perspective. Many of you here today will know my view on the role of the issuer CSD and how important the CSD is in the post-trade space. So things like general meetings, disclosure, corporate action announcements is effectively, we need a golden source. We don't need the communication channels to be wide and varied. We as an industry, as a recipient, as a custodian, we'd like to see that coming from the issuer CSD. We think the issuer CSDs amongst you also play an active role in this today, but it's making that role more important than it is today. But also within the text, please notice corporate events. Corporate events covers AGMs, corporate actions, shareholder disclosure, income. So it's everything. So when, you know, it's not a distinction now between an AGM announcement or a corporate action announcement. Lastly, at DB, what we've done, we've taken this reg and we've actually viewing this as a perfect opportunity to look at different forms of technology. I've heard new technology being mentioned quite a few times already today, which is encouraging, but we're already we're looking at distributed ledger technology to help our clients with the shareholder disclosure process. I'll come on to why that's important as well in a little while. So industry, what are we doing? So I mentioned earlier that we're going above and beyond the minimum requirements. We've put in place a steering group, which I recognise a few of you here today that sit on the steering group. And underpinning that is 4 working groups, 4 task forces. So we have the General Meetings Task Force, which is looking at improving the joint working group standards for general meetings that were published in 2009, I think it was. But I will be completely transparent, as many of you know me, I tend to be. The progress is slow. We're not actually changed one standard yet through this process. There's been a lot of discussions, but what we are learning is a lot from the issuer side of the fence, where we're constantly having to remind our friends there that this is called the Shareholders Rights Directive and not the Issuers Directive. But we're working with them still, and hopefully the aim is to have revised standards in the general meeting space. The Golden Operational Record, or the GOR, is focusing on putting in place a template which will allow issuers to complete all the key information which is required under the regulation, but also within the Corporate Action Joint Working Group and our standards there, which remains still to be the benchmark across Europe for corporate actions. So why is the template important? Well, issuers may not know what some of the key dates are. For example, they might not know what an X date is, they might not know what a buyer protection deadline is, but they will know a record date and they will know a market deadline. So by virtue of having these, by getting them to key the fields that they need to know, the template will auto-populate the remaining fields that they need to publish the complete information. That's the objective, that's the aim, and that's what the group is trying to do. It's also one of the biggest objectives we have within AFME in the Asset Servicing Committee. I think Alicia and Anna would testify. We've written to ECSDA on a few occasions just to clarify some points, but we will be monitoring as well as a group the timetables that need to be amended in certain countries, and we believe the responses we've had is that those countries will change as a result of SRD. I won't name who they are, but we'll be monitoring them accordingly. And then on the messaging group, probably this is where we've got the biggest achievement to date. In essence, the group is SMPG, and one of the reasons why 20022 is so important is because we don't have the time luxury to develop the mapping into 15022. So from a SWIFT perspective and ISO perspective, we don't think that they will do any of the mapping. These new fields, these new formats will only be in 20022. The group was phenomenally, they've done a fantastic job, but one of the key aspects what they've done is they've been able to get an emergency SWIFT release in next year. I think it's around May time. So all the changes that we need under SRD will be in place from a functionality perspective before the regulation. So we don't have the CSDR concern where you've got to wait for the annual SWIFT release before the technology catches up with the regulation. So that's probably one of the biggest things. The group has also been able to design the voting format to allow many votes. Remember, the voting now is at beneficial owner level by sending one single message containing lots of votes. They've also been really clever in being able to cancel a vote within that single message rather than cancelling the whole thing and replacing it. We think that's quite key, really, because everyone in the chain, right up to the CSDs, that it removes that sort of complexity, and we don't want messaging if we can avoid it. Shareholder identification, last but not least. The task force has done a great job under Edwin. We should be in a position by year end, I believe, to get the final standards out for endorsement. We've covered many topics. I'm quite proud of what we've been able to achieve, really. We've covered things like thresholds, transparency, how the holding chain should act in certain scenarios, because we felt it was really important that because this is relatively new to everybody, if we put in through a few sort of use cases, scenarios, that you can draw out what you need to do and how you need to act and respond. So announcements. So this is probably one of my biggest topics and the thing that I'd like to see achieved through this regulation. I referred earlier to the opportunity and how important the role is of the issue of CSD. But this is the Article 8. This is a text here which kind of mandates the issuers to give the issue of CSD the information. So first intermediary under the definition of the regulation is the issue of CSD. So effectively, the industry is trying to make that possible by assisting the issuers with the template that we're trying to design and create. From our perspective, being a direct custodian, we're looking to the issue of CSD to be the golden source, to be the official authenticated source for the announcement. One of the reasons this is key is the deadlines within the reg are quite strict. If I receive information before 4 o'clock, I've got to send it out the same day. If I receive it after 4 o'clock, I've got to send it by 10 a.m. the next day. So shareholder disclosure, I've already mentioned it a fair bit, but I wanted to illustrate here the challenge that faces us all as intermediaries, because effectively everybody in the intermediary that receives the disclosure has to report back. So if the issuer appoints an agent or uses a CSD or a third party, everyone has to send back their books and records. So that's going to be quite a challenge for the issuers to stitch all this together and reconcile That's why in the market standards we're advocating it comes from the issuer CSD, at least then because it gets disseminated through the chain in an orderly manner. Where it goes in terms of the response is the issuer's prerogative. But there's an opportunity here for people to step in and help the issuers in this space and stitch it all together. So, that's quite a simplified view, but if you can imagine the holding chain is sometimes quite a lot longer than this, it's quite a lengthy process. So that's why I'm saying that the challenge also brings the opportunity for the CSD to maybe be active in this space. Not that I'm encouraging you to do so, but that's why at DB we're also looking at the DLT from a technology perspective, because we think that it's really important that this information gets back to the issuer as fast as possible. Understand that that's it. Time's up. But hopefully I've explained a little bit of what SRD is and what it's bringing and what the industry is mainly doing to try and sort of navigate this regulation. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the day.